breath and I'm ready to go. I'm falling right in and I'm ready to go. I found what I want and I know that we're on top, so I'll tap in and I'm ready to whoa. Holding my breath and I'm ready to go. I catch you laughing and I'm ready to go. You're holding the match, strike it and ignite my soul. I'll tap in and I'm ready to whoa.
2023 was a weird year in the influencer zone, if you will. I mean, Vegas influencers have always kind of been a thing, obviously, to a certain degree, and content creators have always been there. I mean, you and I are, I guess at this point, we can almost say we're OG with some of the content creator stuff for the amount of time that we've been around. But this year, things got real weird, and it seemed like there was a real boom in the number of creators out there. I mean, you can't, I hate to use this expression because I'm probably going to upset somebody, but when I say you can't swing a cat without hitting a Vegas content creator, there's hundreds of them that are out there now. And it feels like there's new ones popping up every day. Why do you think that is? Why is all of the sudden there being such a boom? Is it just there's so much social media and there's such ease of access to social media? And I mean, obviously Vegas is a never ending well of content. Is it just those things combining to say, boom, perfect storm?
Yeah, I think you've kind of hit it on there at the end, is that there was a really strong rise, especially in the last 5 years or so, of these visual social media platforms, TikTok, I was going to say Snapchat, but I have no idea even really what that is. But specifically,
Me neither.
YouTube.
I'm not cool enough for Snapchat.
YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, and if you're a social media, if you're a creator on one, you're a creator on all three, effectively, because you can copy and paste. I know it's not that easy, but you can use that and repurpose it for those platforms. And Vegas is a visually dynamic, really stunning place, and people are naturally drawn to it. I know you and I, if we see something of the Bellagio fountains, like, you know, in our peripheral, maybe on TV or whatever, we're stopping what we're doing to check it out. And I think that's really led to this massive proliferation in content creators being interested in Las Vegas, because I think it draws eyes, it draws numbers, and you don't really have to work hard. And that's no disrespect to anybody who's creating content in the space. You don't have to work that hard to get people interested if you're talking about Las Vegas. And there's a lot of people doing a lot of different things, but it's a popular tourist destination. It's visually appealing, and it naturally lends itself to those visual platforms. At least that's kind of my take on it. And that's why I think we've seen a lot of growth in the YouTube space and Instagram and TikTok specifically.
Something that I've noticed in the last while is there's been a real shift in the culture of the Vegas creator community, and that it used to be, when I first got into doing this podcast 5 years ago now that I've been doing this, there was a real attitude of, if one of us wins, we all win, and we're going to support each other, and we're going to work hard, and we're going to elevate each other. I mean, my audience was elevated. There was another podcaster out there by the name of Chris Kim who used to do a Faces and Aces podcast, and he reached out to me and said, you know, hey, I'd love to have you on to talk about your podcast, kind of pay it forward, because when I got started, there was another podcaster that did that for me. And I've always sort of made a conscious effort to try and do that myself and bring other creators on and elevate their content. But it seems like, as of late, the attitude seems to be more of a, and I'm going to drop an F-bomb here, fuck everyone else. I'm in it for me, and screw all of the rest of you, because I'm just in it for me. And that really seems to be the direction things have gone lately.
Yeah, I don't know. I lean towards the idea that there's just more money in it now. And there really wasn't at the beginning. I think for a lot of people, I mean, I think I started in 2014 or something like that. I mean, so it's been like 10 years now. And for a lot of people that I knew doing content, and I'm not saying we're better than anybody who's starting now, or the community then was better or anything like that. You're right. It's just evolved. And for a lot of people, it was a pure passion project. And if you made enough money to just pay for your your hosting platform. You were winning. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And not every
I'm still there is where I'm at right now. That's still where I'm at.
not everybody back then got along, just to be clear. But I do think you're right. It's just as more creators have come on, there's a lot more different conversations happening. There were fewer conversations happening, and a lot of people were kind of in those conversations together. Where now there's kind of all these kind of disparate channels now, and so there's a lot of disparate conversations going on. And now there's more money being involved. I think a lot of the companies in Las Vegas have realized, oh, this is really good marketing for us. It's low effort, moderate success. And so they're throwing money at this. And, there's only so many players in the Vegas market. And a lot of these content creators want to capture them and be the one who does. And that's my take on why there's a lot of me in there, which actually makes sense. I mean, if you're making this your actual profession, you've got to create a moat for yourself. But what does that do? It creates that kind of antagonistic feel sometimes, where it doesn't always have to, but it definitely does feel like that, at least with certain people.
There's a level that I've noticed too of toxicity within the community. I've seen creators talk about being attacked, personal attacks. I mean, if you want to go after my content, go ahead. If you want to tell me your content sucks, that's fine. Go for it. I don't care. That's your opinion. And there's people that like my content, and that's fine. But when you start attacking people for their looks or their weight or their budget and, making fun of the fact that they're low rollers and just, hate there's hatred, there's backstabbing. People are sabotaging each other's feeds by bombing them with negative reviews and 1-star reviews and straight up content theft or lack of attribution. I guess it, as you said, it kind of, there's money involved now. So people are more cutthroat about it, I guess. That's the only reason I can think of. But again, there's no excuse for personal attacks on people.
No, I'm with you. And I think an old axiom, a saying that when I was doing comedy, and it's very prominent in the comedy world of, when you ask yourself whether or not you can joke about something or someone, the idea is to go through the test of, am I making fun of who they are or am I making fun of what they do? And if it's the latter, then you're probably fine and you can get away with it. But if you're, as you said, kind of attacking someone for things that they can't control, then that's when it really gets out of line. But I think on the other side of that, there are people who lodge valid criticisms, and I'm not talking about myself. I'll be talking about other people here. But I think there are people who succumb to, what's the term? I think it's Bertrand Russell. He's a philosopher. I think he called it persecution mania, which is, I keep getting attacked for this thing. People keep calling me out on this particular thing or complaining about me for this particular thing. Why am I causing this uncontrollable irritation? It can't possibly be something that I'm doing. They must all be wrong, or they must all be trolls, right? And so you get this kind of dynamic of, you get people that are treated unfairly because social media at times can be toxic. But then you get people who are called out for what they're doing that is maybe in bad taste, maybe possibly lightly illegal, and they're pushing back and saying, no, this isn't valid criticism. You're just a troll, blah, 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 blah. And so there's just this really odd dynamic in social media right now. And I have this push and pull of how much I want to get involved in. Sometimes I'm intensely involved, and sometimes, like right now, I'm trying to take a step back and just let people fight battles as they wish. So it's a really weird time. But I think that happens as communities grow, different personalities get involved. And some personalities are really, really strong, and these kinds of things happen.
There are, as you mentioned, there's a lot of problems, I think, within the influencer community right now. And I think I don't know if it's just the fact that things are growing so quickly and people are just working to try to take advantage of every little bit that they can. And maybe they're not researching what they should be doing or how they should be doing it. But I mean, just off the top of my head, I had a list of about 20 different, well, not 20, but a lot of things. I mean, negativity for the sake of being negative. Now, admittedly, my What the Hell Has Happened to Las Vegas episode is my most watched video episode. and my second most listened to podcast episode behind the interview with an escort. Strange. But
That's strange.
I wasn't being strange how that is, but I wasn't being negative for the sake of being negative. I wasn't clickbaiting. I wasn't just creating this negative content because that's what all the cool kids are doing. For me, it stemmed from issues that I had on a Vegas trip. And then I brought in another creator to talk about it who was experiencing the same thing. We presented what I thought was a pretty balanced conversation and presented solutions to those problems. So that negativity for the sake of negativity, just in my mind, wasn't there in that situation. But I think that is a big issue within the community right now.
Yeah. And I think it becomes a bigger issue when you're getting paid too, because you'll have this kind of selective negativity, and it's, well, why did you hold such a harsh lens to this particular resort, but not have the same critique or the same valid criticism for another resort? And it's a resort that we know that in the past maybe you've been paid to promote. Now, I think most people, even if they're getting paid, can generally have a good level of removing themselves or having some unbiased there, removing the bias, I should say. But that's not always the case. But I think you're right. The toxicity kind of feeds on itself too, as you get the views and you get that taste and that really fun kind of adrenaline from getting all these views in your post because you slammed the Luxor, which, yeah, of course needs some improvement, but isn't going to kill you if you go in there. That's just it's gonna fester. It's gonna feed on itself, and it's just gonna be just gonna continue to happen.
The biggest one, and you kind of touched on this briefly as well, is failure to disclose relationships and or compensation. This is a big one right now, and it's probably been a thing for a while, but it seems like lots of influencers are kind of becoming guilty of it as of late. And maybe, I don't know if they are intentionally hiding it or they just simply don't realize that there are legitimate laws and guidelines in various countries that cover this kind of thing.
I'll say it surprises me, but it shouldn't. The younger generation of content creators, I think, are actually better at it. They're better at disclosing things, but they're also better at apologizing for failing to disclose and correcting it. Whereas the older content creators who are new to doing content creation are really trying to kind of hide it. And if they get called out on it or get questioned about it, really push back forcefully. And one thing I would say to anybody who wants to get into content creation in Las Vegas is you want to maintain a good relationship with your audience. That's paramount, and disclosing is important. But you also want to make sure that you're not bringing that negativity to your relationship with these businesses, because they notice these things. They're following. In fact, interesting story was on my last trip. I won't say who it is or where they work, but it was an executive for a restaurant group in Las Vegas. And they started talking to me about a particular influencer that they were working with who had recently been getting a lot of pushback. And they said, yeah, we worked with this person. They were terrible to work with. And I don't know if they're going to work with them again. If they bring results, yeah, they'll work with them again, even if they're a pain in the ass to work with. But I mean, that's what they told me. And Vegas is, it seems big to the tourists, but it's a really small community if you don't know the locals there, and they talk. And if you burn these bridges at one place, or if maybe you get paid from every single big name in Vegas, but that's not going to last for very long if you get that kind of reputation. If you're constantly pushing back against your audience, if you're burning these bridges with these companies, you're not known for someone who's malleable, easy to work with. Not that you shouldn't be getting what you're worth, you definitely should. So there's kind of an interesting, just interesting kind of things happening in that space. Interesting things happening with disclosures. And I will say that the companies who pay influencers don't like it when it's not disclosed. They'll never tell people that they have to disclose. That's not up to them. The influencers or the content creators have to. But from the brands that I've talked to, they've actually prefer that they do, just so that relationship's clear and that any negative blowback isn't directed towards them, like they're kind of doing some skeezy marketing thing, which working with content creators absolutely is not. I think it's a smart marketing play.
And as I say, I mean, there are laws and rules in place. I mean, the FTC has got very specific laws that are easily searchable. In Canada, we've got the Competition Act, which actually requires influencers to disclose. The UK, they've got the Advertising Standards Authority. The EU is European consumer law. So, I mean, anywhere you go in the world, you are required as a creator, if you are compensated in any way, shape, or form, you're required to disclose it. And I mean, I disclose when I do pay for things. I mean, or how things happen to me. I've been disclosing in all of my trip reports anytime I go and I say I don't pay resort fees. Why? Because I've got a founder's card, which I'm paying for. I'm not being paid to talk about founder's card. I'm paying the membership fees every year for founder's card. So, I mean, again, like it is a legitimate problem. And I think it's interesting that you mentioned that it's the newer, older creators that seem to have a bigger problem with it or push back more on it than the young creators that are either been at it for a long time or even just getting started. I'm not sure why that is.
You know, I don't know. I'd been thinking about it. Maybe, and it might just be the particular young content creators that I've seen, who, by the way, are not perfect at disclosing their relationships. I know there's some that I've seen that do not, and it does irk me a little bit. Like, I can tell you're a young content creator. Yeah, you've got a big following, but I know you're not making boatloads of money, and you're staying at the Palms and you're getting one of their finest suites. Well, there's probably a reason for that in your video. I'm not knocking you. You should absolutely accept it. Just tell us, hey, and I guess I'll say this first. That's the thing that gets me. And I think I wrote an article about this. It's like, it's easy to disclose. It actually gives you, it makes you more favorable in my eyes if you do. And it just has an air of legitimacy to it that really, as an audience member, makes me appreciate you that much more. If you could say, hey, the Palms invited me, they wanted me to show you the suite and all the rest, a couple of these restaurants here, and for me to talk about the gambling, and so they provided the room for me, but I'm gonna tell you about my experience here. And that's fine to me. Like, I can completely understand that. That's no big deal. I'm like a borderline shill for MGM because I just like staying at their properties, right? So it's like everyone has kind of an air of bias to them a little bit. As long as we know where you stand and what's happening behind the scenes, that's kind of all that I care about. But yeah, it gets really frustrating when people don't disclose, and it also gets frustrating for me when people say, "Well, why do you care so much?" It's like, well, this is my Vegas. Copywriting isn't my profession, but copywriting is. And I work in an industry that's very highly regulated. The work that I go through is numerous reviews, legal reviews even. And I'm always trying to make sure that I'm very consumer friendly and I'm not pushing products that consumers don't need. And so when I see something like this, it just really grinds my gears a lot. Beyond the legality issues of just, we have 40 million people coming to Vegas every year. Are we giving them the best content possible? Are they understanding what they're getting into? Why are you constantly promoting this particular place? Yeah, it might be good, but just let them know where you're coming from with this, so they have they can make their plans with an air of confidence.
I like your point about how disclosing off the top, it does almost add a certain air of legitimacy to a creator. If I'm much more likely to respect a creator if they say right off the top, yeah, the Palms set me up with this suite. Okay, well, you must be somebody.
It's professional.
If the Palms or Fontainebleau or the Wynn or whoever is putting you in one of their best suites and comping you a weekend and giving you the opportunity to go in there and film video and stuff, you must be a person, and you're a person that I'm going to pay attention to. But if you're Joe Schmo and you're not doing that, and I can figure out that you're not a multimillionaire high roller, but somehow you managed to get the, whatever villa suite at Fontainebleau. How?
Right.
It's kind of right up there with, now I've reached that point with this podcast where I get those emails from the Instagram follower companies where, like, for $1,000 we can get you 10,000 Instagram followers. No, which again always just puts my back up right away on where, when I see somebody that's got a ridiculous number of Instagram followers, but somehow they get 10 likes on each of their posts or whatever. I look at it and go, okay, well, there's some bullshit somewhere, somehow here. And as soon as you stop paying for those Instagram followers or those YouTube followers or whatever, your numbers are going to drop off and it's going to be a problem.
I mean, there could be a really good symbiotic relationship between, resorts, any restaurant group, whomever, and the influencers, right? Everybody can win, and even us, the audience, can win. Because, I haven't stayed in every room product in Las Vegas, and if you're getting paid to stay at, a suite at Encore, which is something like, I might be interested in the future, and they comped you to show your audience because they know you have a good relationship with your audience and you're trustworthy and you give reliably good feedback and valid criticism when it's necessary. Like, I'll gladly watch that and appreciate that. And even if you had a mild criticism of a particular room, it's not going to dissuade me from staying somewhere, and it's not going to dissuade a brand from wanting to partner with you in the future either. So it can really work for everyone. I think, as we said before, the content community and kind of these new platforms, it's still a bit young in terms of the money coming in and people kind of figuring out how to make it work best for everybody. So I think it'll get better, but I think a strong push from some people sometimes in the future, not me, because I'm kind of done with that conversation. Not this conversation, but being the one who is constantly bringing it up. I think we still need a couple of those strong voices to not be afraid to call those things out, question people politely, and get some eyes on it so that, again, everybody can win.
There are creators, I mean, for all of the shitting on it that we've done for the last however many minutes, there are some creators that really are doing it right and doing some really good stuff. There's a few that come to mind for me. Sam Novak, I really like. Vegas Unfiltered, Vegas 411. I mean, he's negative, but he's kind of honest. When I've talked to him, he's always kind of mentioned he's more of he likes to think of himself as a consumer advocate. In his mind, he doesn't want people to waste their money on garbage, which he's great. John Mahaffey, the Vegas Advantage. I really like John, does some good stuff. Pennies for Vegas. I love Mark. I mean, he's just unabashedly and unapologetically himself, which, again, I just love the stuff that he's doing. And then another couple that I'm big fans of are Jordan and Ashton, who do Show Me Vegas. They run a YouTube channel. They do trip reports. They do hotel walkthroughs, room reports, things like that. I think they're all doing really good work.
Yeah, agreed. I think I'm going to talk about Pennies for a second because I think that Pennies is kind of, I always like people who do Vegas differently than me. And I think when I started, I was very much low roller focused, but he's kind of the master at it. And I do think if I can try to motivate Pennies for an instant, I think if he got more stuff in print, like if he had a website that was fully functioning and was really taking advantage of SEO stuff, because he has just some dynamite tips, and he does Vegas so well on a limited budget. I mean, he's staying at the Wynn. Like every time I see him, he's at the Wynn. And I think he could be a really big low roller brand for Las Vegas. I mean, his brand could be massive. And so Pennies, if you're listening, I would love to see you venture out into kind of more different types of content because I think you've got something great going on. But I mean, there's so many, and there's even I like talking about Pennies. I like people who do Vegas differently than me. So I like bloggers like, Nikki, The Coin Show, Vegas Introvert, Matt Bridger, and again, I don't know the vlogger scene, so I'm sure I'm talking about people who don't like each other. There's like classic. So I apologize. I'm casting a wide net here, but you can generally tell people who are just kind of in it to have a good time, show people how they like to have a good time in Las Vegas, and even people that have maybe a more modest following than say some of these big influencers are in the hundreds of thousands, could be worthwhile to be content marketers and work with these companies. Like I said, they could do it effectively. I think a small, passionate fan base is good as one that's passive and large. So, there's a lot of good people doing good things out there. John Mahaffey, again, is one. He's kind of my litmus, where if I'm on the same side as John, then I feel like I'm doing okay on a particular issue.
Going back to Pennies for a second, he had me on his live stream many years ago. It was kind of right as I was getting started, and I think it was just right around pre-COVID. It was just shortly before that. And I had a blast talking to him. And I'm insanely jealous of his following. He's got a very loyal, passionate fan base. And as you say, I mean, he's got big subscriber numbers and big follower numbers. But yeah, I think, as you say, like, he could be so much bigger just in the way he does Vegas, and he does it so different from so many people. And as you say, he's ultra low roller, but he'll be checking into the Wynn or staying at the Cosmo or whatever. And it's like, dude, you're doing this right. Like, I'm jealous of how you do Vegas.
And this is not my opinion. That was not a critique of Penny's. It's like, I think everybody should do what they want to do. And he's probably putting out content at the cadence that he wants, and he's fine doing it. And he's doing a fantastic job of it. But, every once in a while you see a person who's like, oh yeah, like they could be huge. They've really they've captured something there that could be really big. John Mahaffey is one who's really kind of put his expertise to it as well, and just continue to grow, which is great to see. So, but you and I have just kind of scratched the surface. There's so many great content creators out there that are kind of doing their own thing or slowly building up a following. And it's really cool to see. Going back to kind of the very beginning of this conversation of, I would say, 10 years ago when I was just starting out, I was inspired by a lot of different people. Vegas Tripping was one. Chuck, who was running that site, was like one of my biggest heroes in terms of Vegas content. And he reached out to me to collaborate on some stuff, and I was so appreciative of that. So, there's a lot to talk about with Vegas. So seeing people kind of find their own niche is really fun. Even with the high rollers, I like watching them. Vegas Matt's a YouTuber, and he's insane high roller. I just saw him doing like $360 a spin on a particular slot machine. As long as there's no gatekeeping, like, I'll watch any Vegas content for the most part. Like, but I don't want to hear no, you shouldn't go to Vegas if you're only going to gamble $100 a day. I'm like, keep that crap to yourself, because there's something for everybody out there, and there's a lot of people who are proving that to be the case.
And that wraps up another episode of Jeff Does Vegas. If you've got feedback on this episode of the show, or any other episode for that matter, or you've got suggestions and ideas for topics you'd like me to cover on the podcast, please feel free to reach out via social media on Facebook, X, or Instagram at Jeff Does Vegas. You can also email me directly at jeff@jeffdoesvegas.com. In the meantime, thanks for checking out the show. Be sure to follow us wherever you get your podcasts so you'll be notified the instant a new episode is released. While you're there, go ahead and rate us and write a review. And don't forget to visit jeffdoesvegas.com for past episodes, show notes, Vegas deals, and more. My name is Jeff, and this has been Jeff Does Vegas, a Walker New Media production.